Hi there, how's it going? And welcome back to the channel. We are now on to Detective Comics Part 2, and these are the 12 issues from 1971. We have number 407, January 1971, cover date, by Neil Adams and Gaspar Saladino, the third appearance of Man-Bat, and the first appearance of his wife-to-be, Francine Lee. And the first of all time you see her as She-Bat. It's a story called A Marriage Impossible, and it's written by Frank Robbins, and the internal art is by Neil Adams and Dick Giordino. And also we have a Batgirl tale, and that is called One of Our Landmarks is Missing, and that's by Frank Robbins, and the art is by Gil Kane and Vince Colletta. The trivia about this: there's a scathing fan letter from Alan Brennart, and he goes on to write Wonder Woman for DC, and he has dealings with the Wonder Woman TV series as well. So I don't know whether he regrets the letter or not. Then we have issue 408, February 1971, Neil Adams and Gaspar Saladino, and this is called The House That Haunted Batman. This is a very, very incredible cover. And it was written by Len Wein and Marv Wolfman, and the pencils are by Neil Adams, and the inks again by Dick Giordino. And the Batgirl story is entitled The Phantom Bullfighter, and again written by Frank Robbins, pencils by Don Heck, and the inks by Dick Giordino. And then we have a real strange cover here. I think one of my favourites actually. I don't know why, but it's issue 409 from March, and it's Neil Adams and Gaspar Saladino and Dick Giordino cover. And Batman is in The Man in the Internal Mask, and this is written by Frank Robbins, and the pencils are by Bob Brown, and the inks are by Frank Giacoia. And the Batgirl story is Night of the Sharp Horns, and again written by Frank Robbins, pencils by Don Heck, and inks by Dick Giordino. There's no trivia with this issue, it's just an awesome cover. Then we have 410, and another one of the covers by Neil Adams, Dick Giordino and Gaspar Saladino. And the Batman story is called A Vow from the Grave. This is the first appearance on the cover as well of Eddie Flippy Deacon. It's written by Denny O'Neil, pencils Neil Adams, and inks by Dick Giordino. The Batgirl story is Battle of the Three M's, and by the usual people, Frank Robbins, Don Heck and Dick Giordino. We then have a more expensive book. This did cost me a few bob. Its condition is a little wanting, but beggars can't be choosers, I'm afraid. And in this story, into the den of the death dealers, we meet for the first time Talia. Not that she's known as Talia al Ghul at this particular issue. It's not actually mentioned, other than Ra's al Ghul is mentioned. But of course we don't meet him until Batman 232, another even dearer book. It's written by Denny O'Neil, pencils by Bob Brown, and the inks are by Dick Giordino. And we have Batgirl tale, Cut and Run, and that's by your usual Frank Robbins, Don Heck and Dick Giordino. And next up, issue 412, June 71 cover date, and Neil Adams did the cover all on his own according to the DC database. And this is one of my favourite Neil Adams back covers actually, but Batman's story is told totally in flashback, and Batman records his notes on the case. It's written by Frank Robbins, and the pencils Bob Brown, and the inks Dick Giordino. And here's a charming tale for the Batgirl story, The Head Splitters, and that's written by Frank Robbins, art is by Don Heck. And then we have number 413, July 71. And this is a Neil Adams and Dick Giordino cover. Sorry, Gaspar Saladino cover. And it's a pence copy, just for a change. There's something you didn't happen very often with DC Comics. There are a few around. It's mainly Marvel that had the monopoly on that. The Batman story is called Freak Out at Phantom Hollow. And again, it's written by Frank Robbins and the pencils are by Bob Brown. Inks, Dick Giordino and Steve Englehart for a change. And the Batgirl story is Squeeze Play. And that's by Frank Robbins, and again with the writing and art by Don Heck. Then we have issue 414. And this is increased by 10 cents. So you've got a 25-cent comic now. And this was from August 71. And the cover's by Neil Adams and Gaspar Saladino. And as well as the normal 2 stories, new stories that is, you get 2 old ones. So the Batman story is rather reminiscent of Key Largo, the 1948 Humphrey Bogart movie. I'm sure you all remember that. Anyway, it was called Legend of the Key Hook Lighthouse. It was written by Denny O'Neil, and the pencils by Irv Novick, and the inks by Dick Giordino. And the Batgirl story is Invitation to Murder, and again written by Frank Robbins, art by Don Heck. And in the old tales, there was from September 1953, a tale from World's Finest, number 66, and it was called Captain Dexter in the Australian Code Mystery. And it was written by David Verne Reed, and the artists were Alex Toth and Seymour Barry. And the second story was from Strange Adventures. It's a sci-fi tale, and it was Private Eye of Venus, and it was from issue number 83 of Strange Adventures from August 1957. The cover date, sorry, I'm reading my directions rather than what I'm supposed to be reading to you. And the writer was Gardner Fox, and the art was Carmine Infantino. And then we have 415, again another one with 2 new stories and 2 old ones. And this was September 71, written by covered by Neil Adams, Dick Giordino and Gaspar Saladino. And the back tale is Challenge of the Consumer Crusader. And it's written by Frank Robbins, and the pencils by Bob Brown and the inks by Dick Giordino. The Batgirl tale is Death Shares the Spotlight. And again, that was written by Frank Robbins, and the art again by Art Heck. Art by Art Heck? No, it was by Don Heck. And then we have a character who appeared off and on in Detective Comics in the 50s, and that was Misto. He has the first older story in this issue from Detective 211, September 1954. It was called The Forbidden Trick. It was written by William Woolfolk, and the art was by Leonard Starr. And then we have an unknown writer, but the art was by John Prentice, and the story was titled The Case of the Finders Keepers, and it featured a person called Sergeant Jim Wilkie. This was originally published in Gangbusters number 54, November 1956. And we have some trivia from this issue. Again, in the letters page, Mike W. Barr, he expresses his displeasure with Talia's first appearance in issue number 411. And ironically, he would go on to write some of the definitive Talia stories of the 80s and 90s. Issue 416, October. Neil Adams doing the art on his own again. And this one is Batman in Man-Bat Madness. And it seems Frank Robbins does it all in this story, except for the colours. He leaves that to Neil Adams. And the Batgirl story is In the Deadly Go-Between. And that's Frank Robbins again writing, and this time Don Heck doing the art. The older stories, first was Rex the Wonder Dog in Rex Circus Detective, and that was written by Robert Kanigher, art by Alex Toth, and the inks by Seymour Barry. And it was actually from Rex's own title, Adventures of Rex the Wonder Dog, number 3, June 1952. So I was wondering if Crypto will ever get his own book. Rex has. And the second story was from Gangbusters number 30, October 1952, and that was called We Have the Town Sheriff in the Case of the Gold Dust Death. The artist was Ramona Fraden with letters by Irish Snap. Yet the story writer is unknown. And then we have issue 417. Held on to that issue 71. And obviously November. Neil Adams and Gaspar Saladino doing the cover. And the Frank Robbins was writing the Batman for a Night. Pencils by Bob Brown and inks by Dick Gaudino. Frank Robbins also writes Batgirl tale A Bullet for Gordon, with Old Faithful Don Heck doing the art. First of the older tales, with yet another unknown writer. Before Alfred was called Pennyworth, back in Batman number 31, October 1945, he was called Alfred Beagle. This story was called Alfred, Armchair Detective, and the art was by Jerry Robinson. And then we have Sergeant Frank Spears features in The Mystery that Edgar Allan Poe solved. Yet again, another unknown writer, but the art was by John Prentice, and it came from Gangbusters 49, December 1955. And our last issue, and the end of the video, is obviously December 1971. Batman guest starring The Creeper, and the cover gave that away, I think. We have a tale respectively dedicated to Steve Ditko, obviously the Creeper's creator, and it's called And Be a Villain. And we have a writer, Danny O'Neill, Novak did the pencils, Dick Giordino did the inks, and then Frank Robbins is still writing the Batgirl tale, and that is The Kingpin is Dead, and the art of course is by Don Heck. And the older stories are from Gangbusters number 40 from June 1954, and it was called We Have a Casebook Mystery, and it was the case of the careless caretaker. And yet again, another unknown writer. But strange with this title, the amount of times I've read unknown writer. Anyway, at least I can say the art was by George Papp. And the last story was the completion of, to complete 1971, featured the first appearance of Sierra Smith in Dale Evans Comics, number 1, October 1948. He did appear for 6 years with 26 appearances. This is his first story, and it was called The Case of the Terrified Tenderfoot. And yes, we know the writer as well for this one was Joe Millard. Pencils by Alex Toth, and the inks by Frank Giacchino. And I say, if you stayed with me until the end, thank you. Please like and leave a comment. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. That a bit more clearly. That's better. Thank you. See you later. Bye.